Welcome to the Paul Lovette Show, the show where truth meets bold patriotism as we fight for the very soul of America. I am your host, Paul Lovette, a proud and unapologetic Black American conservative. My story is one of faith, perseverance, and an unshakable belief in America's promise for every citizen, regardless of skin color. We will also confront the issues of the day, both domestic and foreign, and we battle for Christian values in an era when Democrats and the radical left spreads immorality and seeks to tear down and destroy every moral and righteous value we hold dear. When race and politics collide, we'll tackle it head on from a Black American conservative who knows this nation's potential. So get ready for common sense conservatism, unfiltered opinions, and patriotic passion. Can we save the soul of America? You bet we can. With God, courage, and Christian American values. This is the Paul Lovette Show. Let's dive in and fight for the future of our republic. Welcome to episode 2. But before we get into our topic today, I want to thank you for being here and ask for your grace as we get into our routine and figure out what we're going to do here. This is a community, and I am glad you are here, and your input is most valuable. Be sure to send your input to Oracle at thepaulllovetteshow.com. That's Oracle at thepaulllovetteshow.com. That's how you can reach out to me and provide your input and insights, topic suggestions. Please send it over. It is very much welcome. So what we're not your typical conservative show that you find on the AM dial today. We're going to tackle things from a conservative Black American standpoint. With that said, let's drop into episode 2. Our title, K-12 Teachers' Low Expectations Are Hurting Black Students in Particular. Today, we will build upon episode 1's conclusions regarding Black students' low academic performance and achievement gaps compared to their white classmates. Then we will explore how non-Black teachers' low expectations for Black students is compounding the educational gap between Black and white students. Finally, we will explore the possible solutions to rectify the issue of non-Black teachers, and in many cases, Black teachers' low expectations for their Black students. You note that I have excluded Asian students from this episode, and that's because the Nation's Report Card 2022 data and the 2024 data are different. The 2024 data includes Asian and Pacific Islander together, and as a result, the numbers are way down. So the data I would like to see is Japanese students, Taiwanese students, and Chinese students. With that said, let's move on. Our first segment. Academic Performance and Achievement Gaps 2022 and 2024. This is our episode 1 review. And it says math and reading scores for Black students continually score lower on average than white students on standardized testing. Looking at reading here, 2 numbers, left is 2022, right being 2024. So you see Black students are 14% and 14%, no change, no improvement there. Towards proficiency compared to white students, we're looking at 45% with a 2-point improvement in reading proficiency for our white 8th graders. Looking at math, same thing here. Blacks are 14 and 14, 0 improvement here. Compared to 45 and 46% for white students. Once again, we have a 1-point increase. We are having white students are making incremental improvements where Black students are stagnated. And we need to really break that trend. Let's move to the next slide here on our standardized. So what I looked at here that caught my eye on the website was the percentage of black and white students that are below basic proficiency. And we're not, well, let me just, so I'm going to divert here. So looking at the data, you have below basic, you have at or above basic, at proficient, and advanced. So as you see in our slide here, we have 56% of our black 8th graders are below basic proficiency compared to 30% of white students. That's still certainly bad for white students, but it is horrifying for black students to be 56% of our kids are below basic. Looking at math is even worse. 62% of black 8th graders are below a basic proficiency in math compared to 26% of white students. This is just, I don't know, it's just shocking for me, and I hope it should be shocking to you also. What we looked at in episode 1 was who is responsible for motivating our black students. Do you remember? It is our black parents. Our black parents need to have a value on education. And because that value has not been there as a group, our grades and our students' performance suffer greatly because of this. So we have to, as a people, have a value in for education. And we explored, I put forth 2 suggestions in the prior episode, and I hope to get feedback from you. In particular, my wife thought the second one, she actually laughed at that one, but we'll see how, I think there's work there, there's possibility there for those things. So with that said, I'm going to, let me jump back over. So the other part of this, I think I did cover in my first episode, was the fact that when the deficiency in the home, there's not a value placed there, you have this outside influence, and that is teachers. Teachers, a lot of time, they're authority figures. We all know how when we were kids and our teacher said something, it was the gospel. We listened to our teachers more than we listened to our parents. It's just something about our nature. So a teacher is such a valuable resource for educating our kids. They in many cases can be that motivation for academic performance for all students, black students in particular. I'm going to step into our next slide here. And this is for episode 2. And let me just read this for you. And this is from a study that's titled, Who Believes in Me? The Effect of Student-Teacher Demographic Match on Teacher Expectations Match on Teachers' Expectations. I didn't come up with that title. This is W.E. Upjohn Institute, and the authors Gershenson, Holt, and Papa George. Now, I'm sure that's wrong. From this is 2015 data that I came across. So for black students, teacher expectations show a marked gap. Research in the report indicates that when taught by white teachers, the likelihood of expecting college completion is 10 to 20% points lower than when taught by black teachers. This gap is crucial because teacher expectations influence a student's confidence in academic effort. That's something I just touched on. The impact that teachers have on our students, regardless of race, is a high impact. So, and I know for me personally, when someone places a high expectation upon me, I went for it. I tried to achieve that because none of us really wants to disappoint. So even in school, in the job, wherever, if there's a high expectation placed there by your supervisor, your manager, your teacher, we naturally, as human beings, we strive to meet that expectation that has been placed for us. So moving on to our next slide from the same study, when teachers share a student's racial background, they are up to 15 to 20 percentage points more likely to expect positive outcomes, such as high school or college completion, compared to when teachers and students are from a different racial groups. For example, roughly 90% of black teachers might expect black students to succeed, compared to around 70 to 75% of white teachers holding similar expectations. That's a pretty damning, considering the reason teachers go into teaching, it is a love for these kids and a desire to educate them with the best possible education they have. But I guess we can see the society that has been created mainly by Democrats and liberals is one of victimhood, low achievement. Somebody owes you this. Everybody's responsible except for the individual or individual groups. So after decades of this behavior by the left, teachers, particularly non-black teachers, white teachers, have bought into this this lie that Democrats have perpetrated on them and the black community. So we need to find a way to change that. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how widespread that is, but it is enough that is notable, and we can see the impact when we look at the performance of black students. So the first thing I'm not doing here is saying that the teacher is ultimately responsible. As I said in episode 1, parents are responsible for their children's mindset, that value being placed on education. Yes, there's a lot of deltas in that so many of inner city homes are single parent homes, since Democrats saw fit to eject the black father from the black family. This is part of the rotten fruit that has come from that that act of getting the black father out of the black family. So let's move on to our next slide here. And so we're going to kind of explore where do we find, actually I'm throwing this in for one educator in particular who asked for this bit of information. And he asked, where do we find higher concentrations of black teachers? And obviously that was going to lead into same race black teacher, black kids, and how are these kids performing. But let's start here from a little quote here. From the report, major metropolitan school districts such as Atlanta Public Schools, Washington, D.C. Public Schools, and Prince George County, Maryland public schools have achieved higher proportion of black teachers and administrators than the national average. And areas in southeast of the United States, such as Georgia, North Carolina, and Maryland, where there are historic black presence. So to me, it's kind of like, duh, okay, you have these areas of high concentration of blacks, a black society. So it would follow that you would have higher a number of black teachers in those areas. But what we're going to find as we move forward, that having these black teachers teaching black students as a general conclusion that they're going to push those students harder, it follows through, it makes sense. And I'm going to jump forward here because we're now kind of moving into our solutions for rectifying the problem, because in the classrooms, you just can't have that. We have to have that passion as a teacher, as an educator, that passion for all students, regardless of skin color. Our whole society is built upon one people, hyperbolus unum, out of many one. We are American society, and as such, we look past race. So looking at our solutions here, our first one here is anti-bias training. So going into the classroom, we want the who, what, when, and where. Teachers need to understand what is the behavior of being biased. How am I being biased toward my students? And how they're going to understand this. Well, this also will tie in, and it might be on my next slide, is schools and districts need to make a concerted effort to educate teachers. I'm going to say here particularly white teachers, but all students. I'm sorry, all teachers. All teachers need to understand this. As I said before, even black teachers can be biased towards black students. So how do you achieve that? Our number 2 on our slide is classroom observation. So teachers trained in what to look for in bias need to come into classrooms with a curriculum, observe what these teachers are doing, how they're interacting with their a student of a different race than they are. And after this observation, they come back to the teacher and say, okay, here's what the standards say. Here's what bias is, the who, what, when, and where of bias. Here's what we observed or what I observed in your classroom today. And point out to that teacher, here is an example, here's an example, here is an example. And the teacher needs to understand that it's not to be critical, and it's not saying that you're intentionally doing these things. You just don't know. You have that unknown bias, if you will, that's in our subconscious. We're not saying we're going to do this, but we're just doing it. So classroom observation and going back with that teacher to go over that class and point out the things where there was bias. So we want to our next item here is encouraging more blacks to enter the teaching field. Why do I have a star back there? The star is there because, yes, we want to encourage more blacks, but we are one society, we're one people. So I want to get us away from separate this group, because inevitably when you separate, there's different treatment for different groups. When we're one people, Americans, we don't have to worry about that. We're all concerned, regardless of skin color, we're all concerned about bias in our teaching in this context. So yes, we do want to encourage more minorities into teaching, but also we need to remember we're one people working toward one goal. All right, moving on to our next. What do I have here next? So here's my next solution that actually, it has been spoken before. I had a personal friend also kind of express this. I think that I want a teacher financial incentives for, and I'm not exactly sure how this would go, individuals and or groups working towards. So this is very basic, please understand. So standardized tests at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year to mark our improvement. So teachers would sign up for a predefined program, incentivized program for rewards for how well and effective they have raised their students, in particular in this case, black students, their standardized scores from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So if they're successful, they can get a bonus. What that bonus looks like, I guess that'll be decided through bargaining, collective bargaining between the teachers, unions, and the administration. But if this pilot program is successful, I would love to see it raised to I would say a national level, but since we're getting rid of the Department of Education and sending it back to the states, we'll say it would be great for this to be a state level program. Now, an educator I spoke to was cynical of this approach because she felt that teachers would cheat. Well, as we see here on my second one, is a sign up incentive program where teachers are going to agree to strict requirements, severe consequences for cheating. That could include getting fired because now we're in an issue of fraud. So I think this is a incentive. We're paying athletes millions of dollars to throw and chase a ball and tackle people, and it's just entertainment. But here we have educators who are educating our kids who go on to college, who enter society, and they end up running our nation. They end up taking care of us old folks when later in life. So I think there's greater value, without a doubt, in teachers and what they're doing in educating our children, our next generation of kids. So what do you think about this? What do you think about making financial incentives for our teachers? I'm all for it. How do we make it happen? Let's not focus on why it can't work. Let's look at how it can work and how to make it happen. My suggestion is, as far as concerned about cheating, no personal items in the testing room, and for it to be administered by administrators. But we'll work that out as we move forward. And finally, the other place where black students, minority students, and any students tend to excel is through school choice. So school choice, charter schools, magnet schools, these are places that their whole focus is performance, high achievement. And it doesn't matter who you are, the standard is high achievement. I believe this is in one sense because these are smaller institutions committed to academic excellence, whereas you have public schools, a monstrosity that has kind of gotten bloated, sluggish, lazy in some instances, and it's just I'm working toward retirement, and this is just what I'm doing, is dealing with these kids in and out. So the most important thing I think here, I probably shouldn't use those words, but school choice is critical. If public schools cannot perform, cannot bring up the achievement, all parents should have school choice. My kids in an inner city failing school, I'm going to pull them out and put them into a charter or magnet school, take those funds that are being dumped into the failing school and apply it toward charter and magnet school. Then those kids will get the first-rate education, the first-rate expectations that they deserve and should have. And we will see at that point, we're going to see the black students' academic performance, and those gaps, performance up, gaps is going to decrease and disappear. What I probably should do in the future is look at the performance of black students who go to private school, homeschool, charter school, magnet school, kind of look at what their performance is compared to their white counterparts in the same environment. So these are some solutions that I put forth. Once again, I would love to have your input on this, and how would you do it? How would you fix the problem? What solutions do you have? I'm going to encourage you to please send that over to me at oracle@thepaulllovetteshow.com, oracle@thepaulllovetteshow.com. So let's get your view in, and let's get our kids, our black kids, our minority kids. And as you obvious, it doesn't care the kid. It doesn't matter the skin color of the kid. This solution will work for all our kids. Today we're focusing on black kids, but we're going to have success with all our kids. So I want to thank you for being here today. And once again, welcome to the Paul Lovette Show. And until next time, thanks.